Hi greedy 3Ders, welcome to today's episode. Today I'm going to be making this Mandalorian statue here with a little Grogu attached. This is from HKD 3D Studios, and I have to say, out of all the Mandalorians I've made, and I've made a few in my time, this is my favourite by far. It goes together beautifully, it's been sculptured amazingly, and I've absolutely enjoyed every moment of building and painting this. Now, if you want to get hold of this, there'll be a link in the description, and if you're a patron of mine, you will get 50% not only off this file, but off everything else that HKD do. So another reason to join the Patreon there. So stay tuned, I'll talk you through and I'll show you the making of this fantastic Mandalorian bust. So we'll see you on the other side. So it's really important at this stage to test fit your models before you start putting any paint on them. And one of the things I'd say about this HKD design is the putting together of it has been a dream. The parts fit wonderfully. It's been designed so well that us 3D builders will have a relatively easy passage through. Now I'm just using some super glue and some activator to connect the pieces together. The arms I'm joining onto the body because they're all going to be the same colour, and it's easier to do it at this stage than afterwards. But again, whether you glue before or after painting depends on your model and depends on how you're going to do it. But for me, the arms are going to attach at this stage and I'm going to paint it all in one go. Now you can see there's a little bit of a gap there, so I'm going to use this precision bottle and a little bit of resin to seal that, and I will do a link in the description to one of the videos I've done previously about how to join resin pieces together using these precision bottles, and it really does make it easier when you use it with an ultraviolet light. As you can see there, it's quick, it's simple, and it's easy ways of joining them together. There's other ways of joining your models together, but this is the way that I use. Now, some of the joints here you probably won't see because there'll be some Beskar over it, but I do like to make sure that everything is joined in, and as I say, video at the end to show you how we do this in a little more depth. Now, when it's all together, I'm just going to test fit a couple of the other pieces and make sure they all fit. A little bit of sanding required, but that's normal. Now, I'm giving everything a base coat of this. It's a matte black paint, and I'll put a link in the description, but it actually comes out glossy. And to get the Beskar effect, I want to get a glossy surface on there because I'm going to be using some Green Stuff World Chrome, which I've not used before, and that's going to go over a nice shiny surface to give it a lovely metallic Beskar look. So, paint all over it. Moving on to the oak brown here for the main parts of the body, and I'm not going to give it an undercoat, I'm just going to go straight in with the brown. That is going to be my undercoat here, and I'm going to give it a generous layer of this dark brown all across the top part of him, and I'm going to do a bit more work on it, but this is going to be the base layer. Same for the trousers, same material, so everything fits together nicely. Taking some leather brown, which is a lighter colour brown, I'm just going to go over the belt section in the middle. Now you can see there that the top and the bottom join the belt section, so I can paint the belt section real easy. And while I've got that leather brown out, I'm just going to go over some of the areas of the top and the bottom of the trousers and his jacket bits, just to give them another look of brown and just to add a little bit more of a visual effect to them. It's all part of the mega set, the Army Paint Triad colours, and if you haven't got them, I do suggest you grab them. Now, using some of this Painter's Touch, this is like an almond colour. I'm going to do this on his carriage, on his push chair that floats, his float chair if you will, and that's going to get a base colour of that. Again, no primer needed, I've just gone straight across with this paint. Wonderful paint. I'm using some leather brown for Grogu's costume, his uniform, his coat, his jacket, whatever it is, and I'm going to give it a generous coating of that. Again, I haven't done an undercoat of it because the brown will be the undercoat, and taking some bulwark brown, I'm going to give him a highlighted colour because his uniform is his costume is a little bit lighter than the rest of them, so a nice blast all over of some of the bulwark. And this stuff, now I've never used this before, this is the Green Stuff World Chrome Metal. Comes in two formats, an airbrush version and a brush version. Yes, Tony bought the blooming brush version and put it in his airbrush. I had to thin it down after clogging up my airbrush, but thinned it down with a little bit of IPA, and it seems to be working absolutely fine. I am going to buy the airbrush version though for next time, but having said that, I'm really happy with how this has gone on. A bit later on, I did do a little bit of brushwork in certain areas just to tidy it up, but on the whole, look at that lovely chrome Beskar shine that you're getting from this Green Stuff World Chrome paint, and going on wonderfully once it had been thinned out a little bit. I will put a link in the description to where you can buy these paints from, and a little bit will kick back to the channel and just allow me to have the lights on and eat some food occasionally. Right, leather brown again here, and we're going to give the boots a good old blast all across. I'm going to give the whole of the boot a base layer of the leather brown, a bit more work on the end to them, and the belt section which is attaches, that's not a belt really, it's more of a, I don't know, a utility bit that holds these bullets. That will go on separately along with the holster, and all of those are getting a leather brown blasting. Now for Grogu's skin, he's going to take some savage green to start with, and I'm going to give him a base layer of that over the grey. You know me, normally I do put a primer on everything, but I decided on this occasion not to. I'm using the base colours as the primer, and some feral green, which is a lighter colour green, just to give Grogu his renowned light green look. And I'm really chuffed with how he has come out. That's Grogu's base skin colour done. I'm using some of the Citadel Agrax Earth shade to give some shadowing effects to his clothing, to the Mandalorian's clothing. So the inner parts of his legs, as example, and all the little folds in his uniform. I'm just going to go in there just to add some natural shading to them. I think light colours, dark colours work really well. You can do some dry brushing, which we'll do later, but for the darker colours, some of this Agrax Earth shade wash is really, really good, and it just brings out the look of the uniform. Same again, going over some of the boots where the trouser material would be. That's getting the dark shade, and I'm also using exactly the same on Grogu, just to give him a bit of shadowing effect coming up from the bottom only, just to darken the bottom part of his face. But for his uniform there, that's going to have a little bit more of this Agrax Earth shade on as well, and the base itself is just getting a simple layer of gloss black. There's a couple of parts to the base, and I want this bit of the base anyway to just look really, really black and stick out the rest of it. I'm going to give his cloak a base layer, this time a primer of grey, just to get something on the top of it before I turn to some console blue and do some of the uniform. Now I've masked off his uniform here to give those certain sections protection against this blue paint, because I want this to go on nice and evenly. So I've masked it off. I'll put a link in the description for the masking tape I've used, which is tapes that's all different shapes and thicknesses, and it makes it easier to mask it off. And the bit that I really like, this is like putting off liquid mask, but it's a masking tape coming off, just so you can reveal exactly what you've done. Now there will be a little bit of touching up to be done afterwards where some of the paint has bled through, but no real dramas, it'll take seconds to do that. And that's the blue one, really chuffed. Same again on the top part of him, because the sections join together through the belt, so I'm just masking that bit off, and I'm going to paint the same blue across while it's all in the airbrush and ready, and that's now ready to just tidy up a little bit. For his cloak, because I've done the bottom part of his cloak with the grey, I'm going to mask him off and do the top part exactly the same. This is just some primer, some grey primer, and I'm going to use some of the Regiment Grey Air paint from Army Painter to just give his cloak a blast, and again same on the top. Once that's done, Drakenhof Nightshade. This time it's a different kind of greeny background colour, and I'm going to go into that cape and just give the inner parts of it a blast of that, just to give it some shadow and just to change the colour a little bit from the rest of it. Of course, the cape bit on the top of his body needs exactly the same colour. Now, I mentioned painting on some of this chrome paint, and I'm using the brush here for his jetpack. I just wanted it to be a little bit more sporadic, a little bit more darker in places, so the brush did a great job of that, and there's his jetpack, and that's pretty much done and dusted. Really nice. Same again for the Mandalorian base. I'm just going to give that a brush work across just to stick that straight on the black, so when it goes onto the black it will look amazing. Speaking of black, let's do Grogu's eyes with just some matte black, taking your time not to get it all over that wonderful green. At this stage you don't want to splodge it everywhere, but get that black across his eyes. We're gonna varnish his eyes later on, but that's the look of Grogu right now. He looks so sweet, doesn't he? Yeah, little tinker. Using a little bit of pink on a dry brush, I'm just blasting him all across. His ears are pink, at the top of his head, above his eyes, everywhere is going to get a little bit of a base layer of pink right over. And that again just makes him look absolutely great, doesn't it? I mean, there he goes, there's Grogu, pretty much done apart from the varnish on his eyes. Skeleton bone, my favourite colour, is going to be dry brushed across the brown to give it that really highlighted look. Same again across the legs. Dry brushing light colours over the dark colours really does add to the effect when you do material and clothing, as you can see. Looks really nice. Same again on his belt. I'm using exactly the same skeleton bone across his belt there, as you can see, and that's the belt all done. Stitches stick out, which is what I wanted. Now I'm going to use some silver just to do the, I don't know what they are really, they look like little grenades across his belt, so giving that a bit of a once over all over with just some sterling silver from Army Painter right the way across. And once that's done, that's his belt done with the buckle and the little knobbly bits on his belt. Fabulous, really easy. Same with his belt that goes across his chest. Absolutely amazing print. The quality of this is incredible, as you can see there. Now I'm dry brushing Grogu with a little bit of that skeleton bone again. Same process, same principles with him. Before I take some green skin, which is the same colour as his base skin colour, and I'm just going to go over his hands. I also did a little bit of skeleton bone just on the tips of his fingers to make it look like he's got some nails. Now using this wash from the Army Painter, I've gone over all the leather worky bits, just adds another little layer of depth to it, if you will. And as you can see, I've highlighted that with a dry brush, and now I'm going to put some wash on to darken it. Same again on the utility that goes across his chest. Exactly the same technique. And the boots have had exactly the same. I haven't showed you the whole process. It's been the same. Dry brushing with skeleton bone, putting some wash across it, painting the silver bits silver, and the boots are done and dusted, and all the little stitchy bits are sticking out, and that's what I like about dry brushing with skeleton bone. It just looks like I've gone over each stitch individually, but I haven't. I've dry brushed it and cheated. Looks great. Using that dark wash on the blue bits now, and then taking an earbud or a Q-tip, depending on where you live, and scraping off the outer layers, has left a darker layer on the inside, and that's the effect that I wanted. Done exactly the same on the top, and that's those bits done, and I've added a little bit of age and a little bit of definition to them. I'm going to use some silver dry brushing this time over his guns. One of my favourite dry brushes is silver over black, especially on weapons. It just makes it stick out. It makes it look amazing. It makes it look like he's done a few rounds with Cad Bane, with his mate Boba, or with anyone else you want to think about. But yeah, that's the dry brushing of the silver going on. Really enjoy dry brushing. If you're not sure how to dry brush, I have got a separate video which I'll link in the description at the end. But dry brushing is easy and does some amazing effects on metal, especially weaponry. There's a few bits of white on the back of his hands, on his armour, that I'm just going to give a coating here. Well, I'll say a coating, it took about 3 coats to cover it. Same again on the side that holds the dark sabre. While we have that black in hand, I'm going to paint the visor part of his helmet. Once I'd done this, I don't think I caught it on video, but I did give it a gloss coat all over of clear coat. Now for the rest of the Beskar, dark wash going on, Q-tip getting off the majority of the dirtiness, just to leave that shininess and the dirtiness in the background. And as you can see, that's the effect I'm after. I want it to look a bit grimy, a little bit well used. Time to get the blue out now and just do some of the finer details. We're at that stage now where the finer details are going on, and I'm just painting some of that over the back of his hand, of the little armour plate on the back of his wrist there. Now for the dark sabre, I masked off the sword bit and used some white to give it that layer of brightness. Now the dark sabre's got an edging of kind of bluey white, so I also used some of this ionic blue just to give the edge of the dark sabre a little bit of a blue hint, and I just literally splattered it on before taking the masking tape off, and it gave me a nice straight edge, and I think it's come out really well. It's come out as I wanted it to come out, so I'm really pleased with that. I did give it a matte varnish as well, just to make it shine a bit. Now pure red I've used, and I've sort of masked off some of Grogu's push cherry, floaty cherry thing, and that looks battered and well worn when I've looked at some of the reference pictures, so I didn't give it a nice clear coat all over. I just splattered the paint across in certain areas, but I did want a line as to where the definitions are. So using that red paint again and just giving it a bit of a splatter to make it look old and aged, I bodged it across there and I pulled off the masking tape, and the effect that I got I was really chuffed with. You can see the straight lines and it just looks like it's a little bit aged. We're going to make it look even more aged and battered in a bit, but that's the masking tape doing its job, and lovely feeling taking that masking tape off and seeing that it's worked how you want it to work. Wonderful. For an extra layer of rust effect, I've used this AK rust here, and I haven't gone through the process. I might do another video on it, but just look how wonderful that rust effect looks on that carriage. I didn't want it to look like it had just come off the production line. It's very episode 3. Well, it probably looks like episode 10 actually. It just looks like it's been battered and aged, and that's the effect I wanted. And there's old Grogu. He just literally pops in there, sits there, and that's done. I've added it with a wash on the inside to dirty it up and around the outside, but that's the carriage done. Now for the base itself, I've used some uniform grey and yellow. I've just literally splodged it on, and I'm going to paint it all across to get that rock colour. Now there's 2 sort of sections of rocks that go on there, and I've used some translucent green to print those rocks, and they just look incredible. I'll put a link to the translucent green that I've used in the description, but on top of this grey rock and the black, they look great. Back to a bit of Agrax earth shade, and I'm going to give the rocks a little bit of definition and depth in certain areas of them and around the edges. I just wanted to give it another bit of a visual interest to look at. And taking some of this Drake tooth on a dry brush, that's pretty much the rock all done and dusted once it's had its highlighted coat, and I'm really pleased with how that's going to come out compared to the base and everything else. And that's pretty much it. Let's have a look at the final reveal. Well, I hope you've enjoyed that. I certainly have enjoyed making this. Us 3D builders, when we make these models, there are times when we put them together and they're a bit of a nightmare to put together, and joints are all in the wrong place, and it's just it's a bit of an uphill battle. With this Mandalorian here, it's been a dream. All the joints are in just the right places. You can paint the whole thing apart. For example, all the Beskar, you can do all those bits separately, so you can take your time on those and do them with your airbrush, and you can stick them on afterwards, and it's just so much easier, and all the joints and everything else go together perfectly. As I say, it's from HKD Studios. Please check them out, link in the description, and if you are a member of my Patreon scheme, you will get 50% off this model and everything else in his range. Not only that, if you're a member of the Patreon scheme, I have secured some other deals with other 3D sculptors to get you big discounts off their files. So join me in the Patreon for further details on that. If you like what you see today, subscribe to the channel, leave me a like, leave me a comment, tell me what you think about this model. I'll be really interested to hear what you think. Thanks for watching today, and I'll see you next time real soon on Greedy 3D.